Hello everyone, welcome to Helmers MovieMania Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Helmer, bringing you more cinema-related content. Today we have another segment of Cinemawars, where civility and manners are thrown out the window. It is not a conversation about film, nor is it a debate about film. It is a fight about film. Now with me, I have my three other competitors. We first have, he is my co-host. He is film major at Occidental, a former written content editor for The Beacon, as well as a writer at Clapper. It is Alex Holmes. Holmes, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Good to be here, Helmer.
Good to have you. And my next guest host, you saw him last time on Cinemawars. He is a film critic and radio host at Northern Iowa University, as well as a member of the Iowa Film Critics Association. It's Hunter Friesen. Hunter, how are you doing today?
Oh, very nice. You know, I'm happy after my win last week. You're actually able to have me back.
Okay. Those are bold words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and then our fourth host, you saw him on Talking Classics. He is the host of the Cineflek podcast. It is Ethan Colburn. Ethan, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? I'm ready to duke it out with all y'all. This will be fun.
Okay. Yes. I hope it'll be fun. I hope it won't be too. Yeah, it seems like Hunter's already in the competitive mood.
Sounds like it. I'm ready to take him down.
Take him down a notch, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so our first topic. We'll start off a bit light here. We'll go. So, what film that's universally hated do you unabashedly love? So, Holmes, let's start with you. What do you think?
All right, so I sort of bent the rules a little bit because it's not universally hated, but this is a movie that's considered like the worst of the Coen brothers. And it has like a 2.9 average on Letterboxd or something, and it is Intolerable Cruelty. A lot of people don't like this movie.
We have the same movie. I can't believe it.
I'm not gonna lie.
Then. I love it. Keep talking about it.
I did a bit of research on all three of you guys on Letterboxd. I saw that was the film you two rated very highly, and I was like, "There's no way." And then when you said it's a Coen Brothers film, I was like, "Okay, this is good. This is."
I was like, least. Okay, sorry. Continue on. I'm so interested to see what you have to hear about.
Yeah, so I just rewatched it like 2 nights ago, actually, and oh man, I just really love this one. First of all, I had really low expectations the first time I saw it. You know, I'd heard it was the Coen Brothers' worst. And it was just really fun to me. It was like a Coen Brothers spin on like a screwball comedy from the 30s or 40s. And it was the chemistry between George Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones was off the charts. It's a great rom-com. You don't really see the Coens do rom-com. I just really enjoyed it all the way through. It's a really fun time. It's really funny. You got Cedric the Entertainer. He's got the great line, "Nailed your ass." You know, that's just a classic bit there. So I just thought this was maybe not as deep as some of the other Coen Brothers stuff, but definitely doesn't deserve to be placed immediately at the bottom of their filmography.
Like, to really understand why this movie works, like, you need to know that they're like basically parodying a rom-com. Like, so to a lot of people, they thought like, oh, the Coen Brothers are trying to do a rom-com and it doesn't work that well. But in reality, they're just messing with their audience. The joke is really on their audience for like going to see a George Clooney, Catherine Zeta-Jones movie and thinking this will be fun. And then they just make you hate their two leads like by the middle of the movie. And like where most rom-coms would end, you're 2/3 of the way into the movie. And then they still are like attacking each other for another 40 minutes or whatever. It's ridiculous. And it's got some of the best humor. I love Intolerable Cruelty.
Well, I'd say it's crazy that I actually watched Intolerable Cruelty like 2 weeks ago. Like, just coincidence that this happens. It was like an hour and a half, and I was like, you know what? I need a light comedy, and I liked it a lot. I'd say it's the least of like a Coen's movie, if you call it. It's more of just a studio movie, but it's really funny, and I think George Clooney's really great in that movie.
We're doing a new thing on Cinemawars where we're gonna come up with a verdict of what do you think of this person's. I guess we have two people's verdict over here. How many people would say that Intolerable Cruelty is a good movie despite the hatred that it has received?
Oh, it's definitely a good movie.
Okay, so we got I wouldn't count. I'm abstaining just because I haven't seen it, but we have 3 for 3.
You should get on that right away, Helmer. You should definitely.
Okay, and now I have to.
It's fine.
So, Hunter, what do you think?
Okay, so mine is I don't know if I wouldn't even know if I would call it a good movie myself. I just love it. It has a 38 on Metacritic, so it's in the red, so it technically qualifies as a bad movie. It is the 2015 version of the show called Entourage, which is It is. It was one of those shows I watched a couple of years ago, and I really love it. I'm not going to say it's quality television or anything, but it's about 5 friends, which I have like 4 other friends, and we all like movies. So it's about movie making in Hollywood. So it's right up my alley. And this movie is nonstop, a parade of cameos and extended episodes of the show, which if you don't like the show, you would hate the movie. And I can understand people hate it, but I love the show and I really love the movie. So
okay, so I can go now. I took some risks with this question, and it's of course Nicolas Cage finding the Declaration of Independence. It is of course National Treasure.
I'm a hater here. I'm sorry.
yeah.
National Treasure is
National Treasure is a gem. You guys are too cynical.
Thank you.
I will say the only times I've seen it are like in classes. So like I've seen it like twice, in a classroom.
National Treasure is a ridiculous movie,
Thank
but
you.
it's an absolute gem.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not a big fan of the second one. Like the sequel, I'm not a big fan of, but they're making a third one, and I am on board. I will be there opening day if I have to. Even with or without COVID, I'm gonna be there opening day. And the National Treasure, it's just a fun movie. I'm not sure how you can take it. I didn't take it seriously, of course. You know, they're trying to steal the Declaration of Independence, and there's whole like this treasure hunt scheme that they have to accomplish. You know, Sean Bean's the villain. You got John Voight in there. Harvey Keitel, and then of course you have Diane Kruger, and then you have Justin Bartha. You know, he's the classic tech guy, the nerdy guy who has like a one-liner every 5 minutes, and you kind of have to get used to it. But I had a lot of fun watching National Treasure. I would say it's a good movie. So all hands for those who think that National Treasure is a good movie.
Love National Treasure.
And those who think it's a bad movie. Yeah, of course.
It is not.
Okay, so we have a dead tie. So, our next topic is going to be, who do you think is the best director out of these 3 names? Terrence Malick, Wes Anderson, and Paul Thomas Anderson. Ethan, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of cheat here and say that like Paul Thomas Anderson is the best director, but Wes Anderson like holds a closer place in my heart. Like I think Paul Thomas Anderson is the most skilled on this list. He's made the most like complex movies. Look, I love Malick. I just haven't really connected with his work in the same way. So I like they're all masters, but yeah, I just like I've always really connected with Wes Anderson.
So I can go next. I'm gonna go Paul Thomas Anderson here, and I actually don't think it's very close at all, really. When it comes to range, I definitely think Paul Thomas Anderson is by far has the most range. When you're talking about Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love, The Master, all 4 very different movies. And then Hard 8 is probably the only film that I've seen from him that I don't love. I haven't seen I have my Phantom Thread Blu-ray with me at home, but I haven't seen the film myself. And he of course directs Daniel Day-Lewis to what I think is the best performance of all time. And then Wes Anderson, I really like Wes Anderson, but I just don't think he has he's a great director, but he just doesn't have that range.
But I do think he's deeper than people appreciate. Like I actually really like his character work. People are like, oh, look at his like symmetry, and I'm like, yeah. Once you get past like that, he actually does write great characters.
Mm-hmm. And then we talked about Terrence Malick a lot on the last Cinemawars segment. I've seen 2 of his films, right? I think Badlands is a lot better than Days of Heaven because it illustrates the fact that it's not mutually exclusive, the fact that you can have a good-looking movie and a good script. It's not like Terrence Malick sat there writing the script for Days of Heaven and was like, you know what? Let me just not care about this at all because I care about the visuals. Like, you can have both. It's not mutually exclusive. And Badlands shows that. Badlands has such developed characters in Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek. And the narrative is really well thought out. There are a lot of good themes in there. And I really think it's a great film. Days of Heaven is great visually, and I think it's a little better visually than Badlands, but not by enough to warrant the fact that it has a terrible script. I mean, again, you don't have to not care about your characters and narrative to have a visually stunning movie. I mean, look at Lawrence of Arabia. Look at, again, Badlands. Look at and by the way, most visually stunning movies, most good ones at least, have a good narrative and good characters, because when you have those things, it makes you care about those, the visuals more. I mean, the ending shot of The Godfather, and then the shots of The Godfather when Michael is, when he's sent to Italy. visually stunning, and I wouldn't care about those these moments as much if the narrative and the characters were less developed. So that's, again, I'll go Paul Thomas Anderson for my pick.
Well, I wish I had something different to say, but I'm going to go with Paul Thomas Anderson too, and it was actually pretty easy for me. Not to knock on Anderson.
Thank you, Hunter.
Not to knock on him, but it was like 3 reasons: either quality filmography, and Alex, I'm disappointed you mentioned every PTA movie except his best one and my favorite film of all time, Magnolia.
Okay, Magnolia is a good film. I like Magnolia. Okay.
Magnolia is one of those films I watched years ago, and like every like week I think about it. I'm like, damn, Magnolia is a great movie. And then it's my best one. It's my favorite. But it's also, what is Paul Thomas Anderson's style? Whatever the movie needs it to be, though. He can do any drama or any like genres. What you said, drama, big epics, a 3-hour movie, an hour and a half. Like Phantom Thread is like 3 characters, and that one's super great. Terrence Malick is pretty much the same movie every time. Like The Tree of Life is one of my favorite movies, but then he did Night of Cups and Song to Song, which I almost fell asleep to. So, and then Wes Anderson, no matter how much I like his style, it's the same movie every time. I love it, but it's also a Wes Anderson movie.
Ooh.
It's a Wes Anderson movie.
I do think Rushmore is a bit different.
I love it. Grand Budapest Hotel is a movie I really love, but it's one of those things where it's like, when you go watch a Wes Anderson movie, you know exactly it's going to be an hour and a half, and it's going to be exactly what you think it is. No matter how good it is, it's exactly what you think it is. Every almost Paul Thomas Anderson movie has an actor's best performance in it. Daniel Day-Lewis, you got Joaquin Phoenix in like The Master, you got Philip Seymour Hoffman, you got Tom Cruise in Magnolia, you got Julianne Moore.
Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, every one of his movies has some best performance in it. Wes Anderson, they're all doing, again, the same kind of acting, precocious, offbeat, a little smartass. It's great, but it's the same thing.
I think for me, I kind of took the route that Ethan took, and whatever hit me the hardest. And I got to say, Terrence Malick's films, his best films, have hit me harder than the other two. And really, I'm mostly talking about Tree of Life and Days of Heaven here. I love Thin Red Line as well, and Badlands. Hidden Life was okay, but I think those 2 films, Tree of Life and Days of Heaven, are 2 of my favorites of all time. I don't think film should be like a checklist. Like, you have to have great story, great characters, great music, great this, great that. I think each film can be its own. Tree of Life was just truly an out-of-body experience, I guess, at least for me. And so I gotta pick Terrence Malick.
Don't you think his films might be better with better characters and narratives?
I don't think so, because I don't think the characters really are part of it. Like, it kind
so
of.
why have them at all?
His characters.
I mean, why not? Nature documentaries have great visuals. I mean, they're nature documentaries, not films.
His characters are like stand-ins. They're like you're like a bird's eye view in his films sometimes.
But it's like, my issue is why bother even write characters at all? If you're gonna write characters, write good ones. Don't just write them because you have to have characters in there.
Well, I don't think they're bad. I think they fit the stories. Like,
but they're pretty bad. Like in
Days of Heaven, I think it works
the narration in Days of Heaven is straight up just like terribly written. I wouldn't have a big problem with it.
I love that narration.
I wouldn't have a big problem with it if it was like well written, but it's just not. I guess that's into screenwriting more than directing, but I feel like it takes better directing chops in order to develop good characters in your films.
To Holmes's point, I think you can have like intentionally cold characters. Like, I think Kubrick does this sometimes too. Like Kubrick and Fincher both have like intentionally cold characters. It creates a different tone. It's not necessarily like the big like showy kind of Paul Thomas Anderson characters, but I do think you can have you can have characters that are written to be in a more contained story, I guess.
Terrence Malick, hands for Terrence Malick is the best director.
Oh yeah, represented.
Hands for
I'd give him half a hand.
Thank you.
Hands for Wes Anderson.
I'm just gonna throw my vote in for Wes Anderson because I know I'm on my own island here.
Hands for Paul Thomas Anderson.
I'm always here for the winning side.
Okay, Hunter. Nice. Okay.
I'm not mad. Paul Thomas Anderson, he's a great director.
So again, everyone, let us know in the comments below, who do you think is the best director out of those 3? So now let's go over to our third question, which is, what is better in your opinion, westerns or samurai films? Ethan, I'll go with you. What do you think?
I didn't want you to go to me first. Okay.
I was lucky you didn't go to me. I was like, oof.
No, it's a really tough question because like I think that samurai films, at least of the 50s, are a reflection of westerns, right? So they're very similar genres in a lot of ways. If we're talking like traditional, 1950s like Gary Cooper, John Wayne westerns versus like Kurosawa films of the same decade, I'm definitely going samurai films. But the thing is, like, the western genre incorporates so many like quote unquote anti-westerns that I love. Like I love McCabe and Mrs. Miller. I love High Noon. So it's really difficult question. I'd probably have to lean samurai films just because I like Kurosawa is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I have pretty similar thoughts to Ethan. Honestly, I think it's a tough call, but between the films, the old samurai films versus the old westerns. Granted, I haven't seen a ton. Like I've only seen 2 John Ford films, and honestly, most of the samurai films I have seen are Kurosawa's. Like I've seen Harakiri as well, but that's just about it. I prefer those samurai films to the westerns I've seen. But I think in terms of the grand scheme of things, there's so many modern westerns that I really love, whereas there aren't really any modern samurai films that I've seen. Like I love Hell or High Water, No Country for Old Men, of course, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, definitely. These are all films that they are like you said, Ethan. They're just so different and varied. And whereas samurai films, at least the ones I've basically only seen Kurosawa once, so they're all so similar to me.
Well, I hate to be the broken record again, so maybe I should have been called on first, so at least it sound original. But yes, I'm going to go with westerns as well, mostly just because it's like. I mean, they're basically the same genre. They give and take from each other. I mean, for the past 100 years almost. But we're looking at my own personal taste. I would go with westerns because I like The Hateful Eight, Django Unchained. I know those are modern, but like Once Upon a Time in the West, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Even like Blazing Saddles, like it's a western. Apart from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there's not been a lot of samurai movies. Also, I mean, I could find some and find it, but like there's been westerns for over 100 years. In any time period, you can find a great one. So that's what
good point. It's a really good point.
I'm definitely. Let me just get something real quick. Let me just get this on real quick. So obviously, let me. In the words of John Wayne, this is Easy Pilgrim. It's obviously you gotta go Western here for reasons that everyone kind of mentioned already. But so I think Holmes mentioned this. The Western is just so much more varied than the average samurai film. I feel like, in my opinion, samurai films can get a bit repetitive in terms of themes. You got like honor in there, dignity, duty. But at a certain point, it just becomes like, okay, yeah, those are the themes. I don't have to watch so many of these. And I mentioned this on the last podcast. I like Seven Samurai. I do. I won't go into it too much, but Magnificent Seven 1960 version is better.
Yeah.
And I won't go into that again, but yes. And then I like Harakiri, but I don't love it. And it's for the reasons I mentioned. It's just the themes can get a bit repetitive. And I also think the direction can get a bit, it's the same thing virtually every time. And so with Westerns, you get so many different takes on the Western genre. Start out with Ford. Ford is, I don't love all of Ford's films, but she directs the hell of his films. Visually, just like Ford Apache, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, not great films, but the direction is so good. The Technicolor is beautiful, and Technicolor or black and white Westerns are so beautiful. You have so many different themes that can be executed. Like High Noon was all about blacklisting in Hollywood. And then you got Tarantino Western, which is, different from, say, Eastwood Western, which is different from, say, like a Leone Western. Films like Once Upon a Time in the West, which I saw twice this year. First time, I didn't like it very much. Second time I watched it, I don't know what was wrong with me, but the second time I watched it, I was like, oh my God, this is one of the best films. It was actually the best film I saw for the first time in 2020. That's how I just love that film to death. And the Western also, there's a small thing, but it seems like characters play against type in Westerns a lot, at least from what I've seen. Of course, you got, like I mentioned, Henry Fonda in Once Upon a Time in the West, which is just one of my favorite characters, period, in cinema. Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained. Joanne Crawford in Johnny Guitar. you just get so many. And then I'm just looking over my list here. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, I love to death. I mean, Paul Newman is literally like my idol. He's like the one guy, one dead person I could meet, it would be Paul Newman, and him and Robert Redford form such an amazing team. And the Westerns have some of the most memorable characters of all time. Like I mentioned, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Gary Cooper in High Noon, Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven. The Western one just comes down to it. It's so badass. I mean, just see the end of Wild Bunch, and you'll know what I'm talking. If you haven't seen, just see the end, last 20 minutes of Wild Bunch. So I will go, and also music and Westerns. I mean, Morricone's score. I saw Once Upon a Time in the West for the first time in January. I'm still listening to the score. So, like I said, the cinematography. So I'm gonna go Westerns, and it's really not that close for me.
Just to play devil's advocate for 1 second, I feel there was one point I thought of for samurai films over Westerns, and I think that's the fight scenes. I think you just have more.
I'm gonna disagree
in terms of. I think just because sword fighting can be more interesting. Obviously, there are some great gunfights in Westerns, but in general, it's a lot easier to have a good sword fight. Like, it's just more visual, than like a good shootout. I feel like.
I'm gonna.
Which Indiana Jones famously plays with, as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's way. Sword fights are better.
I have a lot of deep thoughts on what you just said, so thank you for bringing it up. Okay, I have been disappointed by so many sword fights in samurai films, and I don't know, it's just me, but it just seems more like stage fighting than actual fighting, just in my opinion. Just like I'm seeing, it's like Anakin and Obi-Wan at the end of Revenge of the Sith. Like, it doesn't seem like a fight. It seems more like a dance. As for Westerns, like, the actual like shootout it's not about really the kill per se. It's more about the anticipation. Like Once Upon a Time in the West, The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. You get and then of course High Noon, which is the entire film is anticipation. The Man Who Shot Liberty Balance, which is it's not about like those. It's not about necessarily the fight. It's about the anticipation. So in that sense, I prefer the fights in Western films.
You're right on the anticipation part. Like Once Upon a Time in the West, the final duel of that movie, like 9 minutes of build up for 1 second of action. So it's great stuff, but the actual fight, I would give it to sword fights.
I also just want to like make a total side comment here. If y'all are claiming like Hell or High Water and No Country for Old Men in the Western genre, I think I can pull the first 3 Star Wars films into my samurai. I'm gonna straight up call them samurai.
I'll allow it. Yeah.
I mean, Cineflek said Star Wars is the best Western movie, so.
I mean,
there's a lot of back and forth, right? Yeah. So I mean, you're talking about like Sergio Leone. Like Sergio Leone straight up remade Yojimbo with a fistful of dollars. So there really is a lot of back and forth. But I mean, especially if we're talking about like Kurosawa, like there's so much buildup in that. He's so good at building tension, and I am more on the edge of my seat, I think, in samurai fights than I am in like gunslinging Western fights in general.
A lot of it is what I said before. It's the music, and I just feel like Westerns have more. I guess the music is more memorable and more upbeat. Like again, you have Morricone. Yeah, again, Morricone.
I saw him live in Italy, by the way. I saw him in concert. It was
awesome.
amazing. Yeah, it was one of my best concert experiences.
And then, of course, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid has such an underrated score. That score is so good. It's good. And then, of course, Magnificent Seven, Bernstein.
I just will say, like, I think we're hitting the nail on the head with like Westerns. Just I think there's a longer history of Westerns. It's a more varied genre in some way. But I mean, first of all, if you were to like average the ratings of like all the Westerns I'd seen and all the samurai movies I'd seen, the samurai movies would definitely win average ratings. And I think I'm just gonna die on my samurai hill because I'm gonna be the one guy on this podcast that's like sticking up for them. I mean Holmes has been sticking up for them too, but I'm gonna stick up for Westerns here. I mean. I'm gonna stick up for samurai movies here.
Whoa!
You're not even fully
You're
like reverse psychology. Yeah. No.
And
I
But
feel
I
so
mean,
bad, like writing off a genre that has the Kurosawa films. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so good.
But then, not talking about movies, but like, just a quick second, like Red Dead Redemption, the game, and then there's the new samurai game, Ghost of Tsushima. Both great games. I love those games. I played them.
you're on the wrong podcast, man. I think
know,
you
I just-
forgot.
I was like writing my response to this question, like, hey, there's two great games I played that are exactly these two. I'm gonna throw it for a second. I just want to throw a second, plug.
Oh yeah, Red Dead is fantastic.
Yeah, it's
I
a great game.
love Red Dead.
All hands for Westerns.
Yeah, Westerns.
I see Ethan is again on the wrong side of the battle.
Happy
This
to
has
be
been a
here.
rough day for you, Wes,
I mean,
Wes Anderson.
If being on,
I'm happy
being
where I
on-
am.
Yeah, if being on the side of samurai is wrong, that's fine by me.
So this has been great, guys. Thank you all for talking today. Holmes, where can everyone find you?
Letterboxd at AJKH34.
And Ethan, what about you?
On Letterboxd, just Ethan Colburn. I have a podcast called Cineflek. You can find that on anywhere you get podcasts. Cineflek. People don't know how to spell that sometimes.
And then Hunter, what about you?
You can check me on Letterboxd. It's just Hunter_Friesen. Gonna be on the radio soon, 94.5. Look it up online. 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock Mondays and Wednesdays, and then see some of our reviews on the Northern Iowa newspaper. I got a new one coming out for the best movies that came out over these last 2 months, so like the Oscar movies.
So again, if you guys haven't already, please like the video, subscribe, hit that bell icon to get notified on all our latest cinema-related content. Again, this has been Cinemawars. I hope you've decided who won this edition. I guess Hunter declared himself the winner of last episode.
2-0. 2-0 now.
2-0 now. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know about that one. But yes, let us know in the comments below who you think won. This has been Cinemawars. Ciao.